Hey, everybody, and welcome to the FYI podcast, where we talk about faith, life, adulting, relationships, finances, and so much more. I am your host, Micah Keneally, and
I'm Josiah Keneally. It's a joy to do this podcast. Thanks for viewing on YouTube, streaming, or downloading wherever you listen to podcasts. This has been such a fun journey. Mike and I consider it just a joy to journey together with you on this journey of adulting. And it's also, we consider it a gift when you subscribe and leave us a review or rating wherever you listen, and share this with your small group, your young adult ministry, or your friends.
And we want to see you end your week strong and begin your weekend even stronger by just listening to some of the questions that maybe you've been asking. So we're going to unpack a question today that's come in through, I think, what was it?
Instagram. This was a DM that came into
yes.
FYI podcast. You can send in your questions there. You could go to www.fyi-podcast.com. But here's for today's question.
That is a great question. Here it is right now. It says, how can I share my faith in the sports world? Well, first and foremost, hello to all the athletes, whether you are on a court, you're in a field, you're in an arena, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, whatever sport you are in. We just want to support you and say that you are in a position of influence, whether you realize it or not, because whether you're sitting on the sidelines, whether you're the water girl, the bat boy, whatever you are on that team, in addition to the athlete, you are seen. People are watching you. They're watching every move you make, and they're cheering you on, whether you know it or not. So we're here to cheer you on today as we unpack this question.
The verse of the day is a great place to start. It comes from Matthew 28, verse 19, that says, therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. And that is the Great Commission. We should make Jesus' last words our first priority.
That's good.
And so in the marketplace, in your neighborhood, in the workplace, in your families, and on the court or in the field of competition of athletics, I think that whether you're listening and you are an athlete or you know an athlete or you have an affinity for sports, or you're like, you could also ask this question: how do I share my faith in my neighborhood? How do I share my faith in my world? I think that's really an important thing to emphasize, is because, it's going to be hard for a non-athlete to share with somebody who is an athlete, unless they're neighbors or friends or family members. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's this idea of relational equity. Talk about, like, for you, Micah, what does it mean to have relational equity?
Wow. Well, relational equity means that you have earned the right of friendship or speaking into someone's life or having someone speaking in your life. And that takes time, right? It's through time, it's through conversation, it's over coffee, it's meals, maybe it's a trip. And when there's equity involved, like, there's a return on that investment in some way, shape, or form. And most of it, hopefully, is reciprocated, right? So,
isn't it the saying goes something to the effect of, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care?
Exactly. And I think there's power in that. And I think along with this, sharing our faith in and out of the ministry, workplace, faith field, non-faith field, wherever you're at, marketplace, is to really realize that everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants to be loved. But when they see something in us as Christ followers on the court, in the field, in the marketplace, in the classroom, wherever you're at, in the dorm room, like, they, as viewers of your life, like, they're observing, they're watching. And with this question, I would even say, Josiah, like, what have you found to be true when it comes to people observing your life, or you observing other people's lives, when it comes to, they're a believer, they're a Christ follower? Like, what stands out to you that sets other people apart, more or less?
I think it would be another verse, but Colossians talks about, whatever you do, whatever your hands find to do, do it with all your might, all of your heart. Do it to the best of your abilities, as you're working for the Lord, not for people. And I think that's where athletes have discipline.
Yeah.
Waking up early, going through practice. Like, everyone sees when you're on the court or on the field, but what nobody sees is the time that you woke up.
The 2 days.
Or the fact that you wouldn't go out with friends at the birthday party and eat the cake because you had to go to bed early so that you could wake up at a decent time and get a decent workout in.
Yeah.
So it's the things, Craig Rochelle says, it's the things behind the scenes that nobody sees that leads to the results that everyone wants.
That's good.
And what I'd say most specifically in my life, you had asked me like,
Yeah.
how have you been set apart, or what have people noticed about you? I would say I had the same job at Grand Slam from like 8th, 9th grade. So all 4 years of high school, all 4 years of college, and a little bit afterwards, but 8 years in the workplace. And I had built relational equity with the owner, the general manager,
Yeah.
every employee. I had the ability to like hire something like 32 employees from our church mainly. And I watched the culture change, but I don't think I have any pride in saying this. I think I was the hardest worker there. And I think I had people write in letters to the owner, and he would show me the sunshine letters. You did such a great job with this birthday party, and I know about it. And so I had developed great customer relations, great friendships, and just respect from anyone who was a believer or far from Christ. And then what I noticed is over time, there was a coworker who used to tease me and make fun of my faith.
Yeah.
And over time, I watched that same coworker have struggles in their life that they asked for prayer for because they knew that I cared.
Yeah.
And they knew that I believed and I cared. It's kind of like the person who went to see John Wesley preach in the fields of London, England. And their friends saw them and they said, "You don't believe that." And they go, "I don't, but he does." Meaning John Wesley believed it. So I think it's we believe and our belief behaves, and we're excellent at what we do, and we treat everyone with the dignity and respect that they deserve. And that's where I think of even athlete like Tim Tebow. He is a hard worker, and he shared a story at Passion one year of how he had somebody who was at FCA trying to get on his college team and dogging it in practice.
Oh, that's
And
right.
he
Yeah.
lapped this guy, I think the story goes, in their workout. And the guy said, "No, I feel like the Lord's telling me to stay back with this guy." And he's like, "The Lord isn't telling you that. You're being lazy." And so I think it's like our witness is our work ethic. Our
Wow.
witness is
Good.
how we treat people. And I think it's also that you can't shortcut time.
Yeah.
And in the process, I think we become a leader who's worth following.
Yeah.
That's something that you're really passionate about, is your creed matching your deed and being a person. What makes a followable leader?
I think a followable leader is somebody that you admire. Like I think, like you already said, like somebody who's disciplined, somebody who has vision and is actually chasing down that target.
Yep.
I think so many times, like we want to be dreamers and doers, right? So when you're on and off the field, like everybody wants, like you said, everybody wants to be the star of the field or be a team player, but nobody wants to get up at 4 a.m. for 5 a.m. practice and do it again the next day for the next however many weeks. Or everybody wants to go get the results at the gym, but nobody wants to get out of their car once they park in the parking lot. You watching somebody walk in the gym does not make you successful. So I think when you need to look for a leader that you admire, but also become the leader that you want to follow.
Yeah.
And I think that'll set you apart right there, because Josiah, I think you, as for instance, is a person who loves to see other people get connected, feel loved, feel seen. So for you to provide opportunities for applications, for example, like you just shared, was just you saying like, "Hey, you're in need of a job, you're in need of a paycheck, and I have a community that could be relatively healthy for you. And it has to do with sports and it has to do with entertainment of this nature." So when you look at that, even you want to be a leader and find a leader that's worth following, meaning like they're not going to have this big moving target of life and destination or the playoffs or whatever you're doing. Because when the target's moving, it's hard to pull back the bow and shoot and get a bullseye, right? So I think when we find somebody that we admire, and I say admire, not idolize, because we don't want to make anything an idol in our life that we become obsessed about, or we wish that we were that person that, that is demonstrating some attributes that we want to acquire, but it's us disciplining ourselves and what is it? Is it Paul says, "I beat my body into submission," right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I do things I don't want to do and don't do things I want to do. Like even that's at odds in our hearts. Like, oh, I want to eat healthy and I want the body, but I'm not willing to do it. oh, I really should do, oh, but I'm not willing to do it. Or so when we follow somebody or we are the leader, we want to be setting a good example in the process.
Yep.
And a couple ways that you can do that specifically for this athletic question, and you can apply it to any form of life like we've talked about. I think I made just 4 little notes. I think number 1, your actions speak louder than words. Like how you live on and off the court, the field, the course, whatever sport you're playing, wherever it is, that testimony in and of itself is going to outlast you.
Mhm.
And I think Josiah demonstrated just a small portion of his life. Like, yeah, somebody was mocking him for his faithfulness to God in the workplace and just how filled with joy he was, or the fact that he enjoyed prayer. And then years later, this person's walking through turmoil and saying, like, hey, you're still a person of prayer. And I know that you are because I've been following your social media. Can you pray for me?
Yeah.
So we never know the testimony that people are going to be taunting us with, our own testimony, but really realizing that God does work all things together for our good.
Yep.
And the testimony that you're going to live out in your life, there's 2 of them. One is your personal relationship with Jesus Christ. That's a testimony that's going to outlast you, hopefully, in the best way possible. The second one, if you ever choose to get married, your marriage is the second biggest testimony that is ever going to be lived out for people to see, whether you want them to see it or not. People are watching and observing. So I would just say, your actions need to speak louder than your words. And I think that's why that's just an important reminder, whether you're an athlete or a marketplace person listening today.
It's amazing. I love it. I love it. Did you go through all 4?
I just went through number 1.
Okay. Micah had 4 practical things. We want to get really practical with, because you had asked, sent in the DM, how do I share my faith in the sports world? And we had said, here's 4 practical ways in whatever field that you're in. And they specifically tend to apply to athletics as well. But 4, Micah just talks about your actions speak louder than your words. That's number 1. Number 2, prayer before games, privately or publicly or one-on-one. But even when Micah and I were first dating, one of the things that we would do, I bet it was weekly, maybe more. How can I pray for you today? And we'd close our dates with that. Hey, how can I be praying for you? You got anything going on at work?
And we'd open and invite God into the beginning of the date and then close it out with a prayer request.
Yeah. But it's like, that's how almost every conversation, even when we're texting, hey, I'm praying for you today, but any specific requests. And I think that that's a great way to just let people know that you're a person of prayer.
And I think with prayer, I'll share a story. Never be embarrassed to pray. Okay. Just never be embarrassed to be a person to pray or to bless somebody publicly or privately or one-on-one. And here's what I'll say, because there's an obedience factor. If God lays somebody or something on your heart, do it in that moment and be obedient. Because I'll share this. I was in Colorado in 2014 and my cousin was graduating and we were going to go trail running on the incline. And on this trip, it was me, my aunt, my mom, like 4 or 5 cousins and one of their friends. And at the bottom of the mountain, like I'm wrapped up my internship at the church. I'm trying to discover like what's next. So I'm in this like lull season where I'm like, okay, do I stay at this church or do I move on? And at the base of the mountain of the incline, it's one of the most dangerous places to go. People get airlifted out of there every single day. It's just, you don't know that until you're done with it. You're like, oh, why didn't you tell me this before I said yes? But at the base of the mountain, I was disobedient. And God laid on my heart, he's like, Micah, pray for safety and pray for everybody. Like publicly, like tell everybody that you're going to pray. In that moment, for whatever reason, I said no. And I was embarrassed to pray and to stand up in my faith. I have no idea why I felt this, but I did. And I was disobedient. Okay. Up the mountain, we made it. My aunt fell once. She got a big bruise. I'm like, okay, I should have just prayed for her and just prayed everybody's safety. I ignored it again. Second thing is I was running down the backside of the mountain. So if you know railroad ties, this thing summits like railroad ties, like a mile up, and then you can trail run different paths down. So I'm on the backside of the mountain. This is the moment that I rolled my ankle, broke my ankle, and gouged my right knee. So it's like rolling an ankle, falling, stitches, mattress stitches, had to be carried halfway down the mountain by my cousin's girlfriend who was with us. And I'm like, wow, what a missed opportunity I had to pray for everybody, not for myself, not to get hurt, because it could still happen. I don't know. But I was disobedient in that prayer. And I was embarrassed to pray out loud because I knew that some of these people were not living for Jesus. I have no idea why I was ashamed. I don't know why I was embarrassed, and I refused to do it. And I'm like, wow, if I would have prayed, would that have made a difference? I don't know, but I chose disobedience. So the testimony now is like, God took me through 12 weeks on crutches and stitches in my knee and a broken foot to really inwardly sift through the disobedience, the choice of being disobedient, and the fear of being rejected. And here's the thing, if you feel that on and off the court and you're afraid to pray, you're afraid to live your faith out loud, there are people not living for Jesus that are more faithful than us at times, okay? Just as humans, I'm just going to be honest with you. And if they do reject you or they reject your prayer, Jesus says it, if they reject you, it's because they rejected me first. So I just want to set some of you free for whatever reason of fear of discrimination or mocking or doubting or whatever. Because I just think that I look back on that moment in my life and I wish I would have been obedient. And I know this was like years ago, you guys, but I do get taken back to that moment with this question for whatever reason. So if you're on the court or in the field or in the locker room and God does put something or someone on your heart to pray for, it may not be like an injury prevention. It might just be the fact that there may be somebody else on your team who's a new believer, who's a Christ follower, but they're too afraid to live out their faith, and you might become the best of friends in the process. So I am not saying that that's you, but I'm just saying be obedient in prayer when God says that.
And echo that, something that's off script as well, but I'm just really observing is athletes are fanatical. They're so disciplined. So if you specifically want to go in the sports world, and you show up to practice and you're like, dear Heavenly Father, if you're shy and if you're timid, athletes are not drawn to that. That's not something that's speaking their language. They're like, dear God, let's go.
You must need like a prayer chant, maybe.
Yes. And I think just boldness, tenacity, because if you're going to get somebody's attention, especially an athlete, this is somebody who's used to coaches yelling and screaming. So it's not like you need to be dominant, alpha male, rah, rah, rah. But being confident in who you are and not being timid because of your faith, it's like, oh, I'm going to be obedient and I'm going to pray full body armor of God out loud right now. And just be confident in it, because you can be confident in Christ. And so we talked about action speaking louder than words, prayer, that was powerful. The boldness and confidence. The third and fourth thing are evaluating your life, your nightlife, your talk about others, gossip, slander. How are you talking about friends, enemies, opposing players, teammates, coaches? Is everything that you're doing in your life above reproach? Is there any unwholesome talk coming out of your mouth? Are you being encouraging to others? Are you loving people? Are you living a life that's your creed matches your deed? A buddy of mine, an athlete, he played with college football. And he had a roommate, and then he had a Bible, and for years it sat on and then he opened it one day in a dark moment, and his roommate goes, "Oh, you believe that? I would have never known by how you were living." And that was one of the moments that led a prodigal friend back to Christ, because he realized his creed wasn't matching his deeds. His talk and his walk were incongruent. And so how could he be a light on the football team? And since then, he's encountered God, and we're all on a journey. The last one is being the same person on and off the court, field, bus, course, hotel. Just what would you call that? Congruency, consistency. And
I think one thing I think about is something Jeff Grinnell. So he was one of our professors at North Central, and his late wife would say this about him. If you would ask her at any point, she would say, Jeff is the same person you see in the grocery store as you would see at home. He's the same person that you would see in the classroom, the same man that you would see at home. So what a compliment to be the same person, being consistent with not only your faith walk, your journey, but your emotions, your IQ, your EQ, your stamina on and off the court, your ability to rally the troops and to cheer and to bring out and call out the greatness of those around you. I think that is a fun charge to lead with. And if you're not an aggressive, like more boisterous leader, then you can be a silent leader. That's completely fine. But then have your one-on-ones, pivot that instead of a big crowd, then pivot that in the small groups, pivot that in the appetizer nights or the rallies at your house where you have 5 to 6 people instead of 15 to 30 people, maybe. So just really realizing like being and becoming the same person that you want to live not just Monday through Saturday and Sunday set apart, but Monday through Sunday, you're the same person. You're growing. We're never the same person we were yesterday. We should be getting better and better each and every single day, because as a believer, you should be desiring to be more like Christ and growing in those attributes of him, of love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, gentleness, kindness, self-control, and just the fruit of the Spirit should be emulating from you through your words and actions, and even how you interact with your teammates and players and opponents, refs. If you don't like the call, how do you respond? And don't let the heat of the moment take over the testimony that you're living. So I'm just here to encourage you, because we've been both athletes ourselves, and it can get intense sometimes, especially if you're a person that's, what do you call it? Not intense, but I'm brain farting. Competitive, that's the word. Oh my God. If you're extremely competitive, why do you always have to win? Winning is what we want to do, but realizing that there's a gain in the loss too, and it's part of the character building. So
we have kind of a special treat. We showed you at the front of this episode that we were going to have a special guest join us. And as we planned for this episode, I just wanted to share this conversation that we recently had with Paul Allen. He's going to talk about sharing the gospel organically. He's going to talk about why the gospel is important and the difference that God's made in his life. So enjoy this conversation, kind of 2.0 of how to share your faith in the world of sports. You're listening to the FYI podcast.